For a series as old as Sonic the Hedgehog, there are definitely a big amount of cut content from each game, whether that's cut characters, songs, or most notably, stages. Ever since the very first Sonic game in 1991, just looking purely at the mainline games, there have been over 20 cut stages that have never seen the light of day. So in today's video, I want to take a look back and look at every cut Sonic level. We'll be starting all the way from Sonic 1 and going down the line until we have no more cut stages left. But I don't want to waste any more time. Let's uncover the truth about Sonic's lost levels. Starting off with Sonic the Hedgehog, 1991. It was a given that, this was their first Sonic game, there would be cut stages. But when looking at the game's concept art, there seems to be only 2 stages that never made it to the final game, one of them being dubbed Golden Capital, and you'll probably recognize this level from the Golden Sun Loop that was referenced in Sonic Movie and in Sonic Superstars, and the level itself was also redone in Sonic Superstars. So after 30 years, this lost level has been declassified. But the Golden Loop isn't the only interesting thing about this level. The whole stage seemed to be having this South Asian inspiration, and you can see it in the temples and in the lush jungle that takes place in the background. Another unused level, officially titled Mountain Stage / Underwater Stage, has these really cool Japanese inspired mountains in the back with this city too. But besides those 2 stages, there aren't any more cut stages in Sonic 1. A lot of the stages look different to how they end up in the final game, but for the most part, nearly every other stage made it into the final game. Up next, we have Sonic CD, 1993. Now, I know this game came out after Sonic 2, but when they were making this, they were making it alongside Sonic 2 in Sega of Japan. And it does come after Sonic 1 story-wise, so I'll cover this before we get into the big one. So when it comes to Sonic CD, it's not really clear that there was gonna be a cut stage, but there was one place where we had to look at that showed us the cut stage, and all we have to do is look at the credits.
Yourself! Hey!
Right there, codenamed Round 2, or R2 for short, would have been in between Palm Tree Panic and Collision Chaos, and we can see it in this cutscene. Now, this was a known stage for a long time, but we have little to no information on it since there was no pieces of concept art. Only until 30 years later where we have one piece of concept art put in Sonic Origins. And the concept art itself is extremely basic. It seems like the stage would have been like this ancient ruins level or an abandoned city type stage. Furthermore, we have a few sprites and enemies from the stage. We can see this beetle enemy, which we can also see in the animation, further adding to the fact that this stage was gonna be R2. We can even see a drill bot and a snake type enemy. Even more so, it seems that we might have even have the music for the stage. It has been confirmed that the Little Planet theme was going to be used for R2, and we even have a snippet of what the Bad Future theme of the stage was gonna be. And when you take a listen to both, you can hear where they share similarities. And this is not confirmed, but this track seems to be what the Good Future track would have been. We have so little information on this stage, but it would have been cool to see what this stage could have been, and it seems that this was the only cut stage from the original game that we know of. But if we want to get technical, for the mobile version of the game, they were gonna have this stage called Desert Dazzle, which was inspired by a cut stage from Sonic 2. But while incomplete, there is still a part of the stage that is found in the game's data of Sonic Origins where you can play some of it. But overall, the cut content in CD is already getting more interesting than what we had in Sonic 1. Now, this next game is the biggest and the most amount of cut stages in any Sonic game in history. Sonic 2, 1992. For a while, we have known that this game has had a few cut stages, like Wood Zone, Sand Showers, and the infamous Genocide City Zone. But about 5 months ago, hosted by the Video Game History Foundation, a lot of information about Sonic 2's development has been revealed, and in total, we have found 11 cut zones. Like I said, this file is big. So really quick, before we get into these levels, we have to understand what Sonic 2 was originally going to be. So in the early concept stages of Sonic 2, the game was going to feature a time travel plot as part of the story, where Sonic and Tails would chase Eggman through time and try to stop him from changing the past. And we can see how this would be handled in the different world maps that we would get in the concept art. We have a present time, a past time, present time 2, past 2, and the future. And you would go back and forth through time and see how your actions affect the future, like Green Hill turning into Dust Hill, and even one version of the past map being hit by a tsunami flooding the whole island. Now that we have all of that explained, we can get into all of the stages that were cut. We're gonna start with the most well-known ones and work our way to the more interesting and obscure ones, starting with what is probably the most popular cut stage in Sonic history, Hidden Palace Zone. Now, this was originally where Sonic would unlock Super Sonic in the original game, and it actually made it really far into the game's production. There is even somewhat of a playable version of the stage in the Nick Arcade version, with enemies and rings placed all around the level, but eventually you just get to a point where you just can't progress any further unless you use debug mode, and once you get further, the game starts to break. It looks like they made a bunch of progress though, but for some reason they just cut the stage. But eventually, for the headcanon version of Sonic 2, the level was brought back into the game as a fully functioning stage. So it took 21 years, but this stage has returned to us. Next, we can talk about Olympus Zone, which is the only stage that has no concept art whatsoever. But it seemed like it would have been playable the first time you go to the past, but besides that, we have no idea what the stage would have looked like. Up next, we have Ocean Wind Zone. Now, this would have been the second stage that you play after Green Hill, and this seems like it would have been this beach aesthetic to it, and at first glance, it kind of gives off Wave Ocean vibes. Up next, we have Wood Zone, or Secret Jungle Zone. Now, this seems like it would have been a whole treehouse type vibe where you run into the treetops and run through the jungle. We even have a very unfinished version of this level in the Nick Arcade build of the game, and we can even see that this level has this treadmill mechanic that goes unfinished in the Nick Arcade build. But when pulling from the file, we can see a short animation of Brenda Cook's portfolio reel, who was a level designer on Sonic 2, and we can see how the treadmills would have worked in the game, along with some spikes that would come out of the ground to try and get Sonic. But in the end, this level would go unused and actually go on to be a concept art for Mushroom Hill in Sonic & Knuckles. Up next, we probably have one of the more infamous stages in the game, Sand Showers. Now, if this stage looks familiar to you, you may be thinking about Sonic Mania's Mirage Saloon, because this stage is technically based off of Sand Showers, because again, technically it was inspired by Desert Dazzle, which was mentioned earlier, because when making this CD port, Christian Whitehead wanted to make his own unique stage for the game inspired by Sand Showers for Sonic 2, but since they wanted Sonic CD to be as faithful as a remaster as possible, they opted out of putting that level in the game. So when Mania came around, he was finally able to bring that stage to life. We also have a short animation from Brenda Cooks of the stage, which shows the flowers would have opened up and closed, and that the stage would have had these sand falls. And since we're on this topic, another stage that uses virtually the same assets but color swapped was Rock World, which was made as a Winter Wonderland version of Sand Showers, which could have been a cool way to show how time would affect the stage. Up next, we have Tropical Suns, which seems to be an alternate version of Ocean Wind Zone. This stage gives more Emerald Coast vibes compared to the Ocean Wind level because of the more greenery and the cliffs on the ocean side. And I'm a real sucker for beach levels, man, so something like this just makes me really happy to see. Up next, we have Blue Ocean Zone, which seems like a completely original stage. It also seems like it takes elements that would be seen in Hydro City Zone, We even have a section of the level where all of the animals on the sea would be swimming around in the level with you. Then we have Madness Mountain Zone, which gives off Marble Zone vibes from Sonic 1, but it looks like this is what Mystic Cave turned out to be. Then we got Emerald Isle Zone, and when looking at it, it seems like the idea would go on and become Aquatic Ruin Zone, obviously with the aquatic ruins, but it seems more medieval with a darker stone and the stage looking like it takes place in a forest. Then we have the Death Egg Zone, but it seems like it was going to be a complete level in the Death Egg. They never got to fully realize it, but this idea would come to fruition in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And finally, the level that I put off till the end of this segment, the infamous Genocide City Zone, or for your fucking pansy, you can call it Cyber City. This was going to be the penultimate stage to Sonic 2 before you go into the Death Egg, and we actually have a lot of info on this stage. We have concept art of the games that let us see the interior of the stage, and when looking at it, it looks like it would have been the future version of Metropolis Zone. And we actually have a lot of asset sheets from the stage and color palettes, and again, shout out to the Video Game History Foundation, they were able to make a mock-up of what this stage could have played like. Now, it's missing a lot of features like enemies, and we don't really have an idea of how everything would possibly work, but it's really cool to see what this stage could have been, and it's one of my favorite cut stages, so seeing it bring Bot to light like this is so cool. But that basically covers all of the scrap stages that we know from Sonic 2. And when looking at it, it's insane just how much was scrapped from this game. Even stages that made it past the concept stages and were being actively developed like Hidden Palace or Wood Zone, they just got the boot. But I get it. They had the pressure of making this sequel to what was at the time Sega's big break, so they wanted it to be as great as it possibly could be. But even if we couldn't get everything from the concept arts of the game, a lot of the ideas would make their way into other games, like the time travel plot in Sonic CD, and a lot of the concept art was repurposed for Sonic 3. But now that we're done with Sonic 2, it's time to jump into the third dimension. Sonic Adventure 1999. If you want to be technical, Sonic Adventure along with Sonic Adventure 2 has no unused stages that I could find. But Sonic Adventure 1 has a stage that is so radically different from the final game that I would consider it a completely different stage, Windy Valley. Now, I've made a whole video on this topic and talked about it in my Sonic Adventure beta video, but to go over it here, in early builds of Sonic Adventure, Windy Valley had a completely different look. Compared to the more realistic and linear stage, Windy Valley was way more saturated, open, and took on a more fantasy aesthetic. This stage can be seen in promotional screenshots of the game and early trailers and showcases. It can even be seen in the final game when Amy is reminiscing about the events of Sonic CD, and it seemed to make it really far into development. But what my theory for the reason the stage never got made into the final game is because the stage is just too big. Now, this is just my theory, but when looking at a lot of Sonic Adventure's level design, it consists of very long levels so that the processing power can be saved. If you notice, nearly all of the stages have multiple sections that are split off with loading screens, and the stages are cleverly built to optimize the game, like in Emerald Coast where half of the level is split by the Orchid Chase to unload the other half of the level. But this stage, specifically in the third section, you can literally see the whole stage from the beginning, and it doesn't help that the stage is not only big, but it's very open as well. So it was either the pop-in and the level just popping in and out of existence, or cut the stage entirely for better optimization and just for a better look. And they chose the latter. But thankfully later on, the fans found the auto demo for Sonic Adventure, and in the auto demo, there it was, the full stage in all of its glory. So modders were able to piece it back together, so now with mods, you can unofficially play the original version of the game the way that it was intended. Well, it's time to move on to the next game, and the last game in a while that had any unused stages, believe it or not. Sonic Heroes 2003. In Sonic Heroes, Final Fortress was originally going to be Egg Fleet. When looking at the concept art for Egg Fleet, it looks way more like Final Fortress than anything. That's because the original final stage of the game was going to take place in an underwater base. This was probably cut due to time constraints, But later on in 2006, the same idea would be used in Aquatic Base in 06. Now, the game has 2 more cut stages that only appear to be concepts and were never developed any further. One of them being a pirate themed stage. Now, this one gives me hella Pirate Storm vibes from Secret Rings, and a mix of Skeleton Dome. And the final unused stage that was left in the game's concept art was this weird ancient civilization. It just looks so cool, and it kind of reminds me of Breath of the Wild and the Guardians a bit. But yeah, most of the stages here seem to be merely concepts because they don't seem to be in the files anywhere, in the games or the betas or anything. And now we have a predicament. It seems like ever since Heroes, there hasn't been a single Sonic game that has unused or cut stages in the games. Not Unleashed, not Colors, not Forces surprisingly. Even 06, despite all of those games' issues, all of the stages are here and accounted for. It won't be until the year 2022, 19 years later, where Sonic Team would eventually have to cut some content again. Sonic Frontiers, 2022. Now, what makes this game different from the rest of the Sonic games that came before it is that obviously it's an open world game or open zone. So a lot more content needed to be developed for the game. And in this game, instead of the action stages being the levels that are cut, full zones are cut from the game. So I think we should talk about the infamous World Ship.
Did somebody say World Ship?
Oh, god damn it. So yeah, in the files of the game, there is reference to this area in the game called the Ancients World Ship. These come in 2 files from Sage talking about it.
It is what remains of the Ancients World Ship. It was their ark to this world. Sonic, I believe I can access the ship's ruins. Join me.
Now, it's not clear if this was supposed to be a separate whole world or just take part in an open zone as a side level, but it's interesting that they never added it into the game, even though they had voice lines recorded for it. Now, secondly, and this is probably the biggest discovery we've made so far, is that not too long ago, there was a development panel about how they made Sonic Frontiers, and in one of the slides, there was an image of an unused 4th island. Now, this island seemed completely blank and it only seemed like a layout. And I don't think there's any work done on it. But when you think about it, those rumors of 4 islands start to make more sense. It seemed like instead of splitting Kronos up into 3 different islands, there was gonna be a 4th one. But either they didn't have enough time or they just didn't want to do it, because the game just never made the final cut. There's not even any mention in the files, in the story, anywhere. It's like it just never existed. There isn't even any concept art public to the world. But maybe one day we can get a glimpse of what that world could have been like. And with that, that covers all of Sonic's lost levels. I love this shit because we'll never know when one day there could be a massive leak or information dump from Sega like we got with Nintendo's Mega Leak, where we just get a shit ton of information like we got with Sonic 2. It's something that's always exciting, and I just love history in general. So when you combine games and history, you got yourself some safe for home crack right there. I can't wait to see what other info gets revealed in the future, cause I think we might only be scratching the surface of what's really behind closed doors. I'ma find you one day. Mark my words, I'll find you one day! But that is everything I have to say in this video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment down below. What is your guys' favorite cut level? Or are there some that I completely missed out on? But I don't think I did. I looked all over and I think these are all of the cut levels. And for me personally, I think I have to go with Genocide City. Again, just the idea just sounds so cool, and it would have been really nice to see what a finished version of that stage could have looked like. But yeah, that's really all I have to say with y'all. And guys, as I was editing this video, we reached 6,000 subscribers. I just want to say thank y'all so much. I could not have done any of this without you. We're getting closer and closer to 10K. Like I said before, at the beginning of the year, I want to get 20,000 subscribers, which I know is a lofty goal, but I believe in us, I believe in this community, and I hope that, we get there. But I will forever be grateful. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching the videos. Thanks for watching, because without you watching and without you, enjoying the content, I wouldn't even have the fan base that I have. I appreciate every single one of you, and I can't wait for all the new videos. But I'm going to take a little bit of a break next video. I'm going to do something more chill. If you guys like this style of content, let me know, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye!